In this lesson, we'll learn how we can start to extrude and smooth our polygon surfaces. Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to be talking about some really key critical things when it comes to working with polygon surfaces in Softimage. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how we can actually start to fill in and begin creating new polygons in areas that we need them. So you see that we have right now just sort of this open hole at the end of our wing. So in Softimage, this becomes a really easy problem to fix up. This can be done by going to Modify Polymesh, and we can use the Add Edit Polygon tool. And essentially, just like the name suggests, this will allow us to come in and start adding new polygons and building new polygons directly onto an existing surface. So this really works if we have some kind of an open border edge like this. So if we go to our Add Edit Polygons, we first need to just click on an open border edge here. You can see whenever I move my cursor over it that we have this sort of a little red line that appears on this edge. So if I click once and now start to just simply move my mouse around, I'm not pressing and holding any sort of a keyboard shortcut or any kind of a mouse button right now, I'm just simply moving. You can see that if I start to move my cursor down to another edge, that we automatically have this little snap that occurs. And we have these four little lines that appear, one on the top, bottom, and on each side, sort of signifying where a new polygon would be. So if I were to now left click on this, you can see a new polygon has been created, but we still have this little sticky piece that is still connected to my cursor. So whenever I'm finished drawing this polygon, in Softimage we just right click, and now that takes us out of a polygon creation mode, but it still leaves us in the same tool. So now I can come in, click on the polygon next to it or the edge next to it, go up to this edge up here, left click, and there we go. Again, just right click to stop drawing the current polygon. Once again, find an edge, find a connecting edge, and there we go. Again, right click, keep going through here. Again, right click when you're done. And you can start to see very quickly how we can begin filling these in. Now over here we have these little empty edges as well. So again, just left click, come over here to a joining edge, left click, and then right click when you're done. Looks like we have one more down here, so again, left click, connect it up, and then right click when you're done. Now to just simply get out of this tool altogether, once we're finished connecting all these together, just simply tap your space bar, and now we're back into a normal object mode. Now another really important concept when it comes to working with polygons is the topic of extrusion. Now extrusion, again, is very important when it comes to actually learning how to model and work with your polygons. And extrusion is basically the process of taking an existing polygon or a set of polygons and really just pulling them out and starting to create new polygons along a certain path. So what we could do is, let's just press the U key on our keyboard. Let's come across and grab these polygons right along the wing here. Again, with these selected, I can press the F key on my keyboard to frame in on that. So that way we can actually orbit around. Now, with these components selected, or these polygons selected, let's go to Modify Polymesh, and we can extrude along an axis. So just like the name suggests, we can actually now start to pull our polygons out, or we could even push them in if we need to. We could actually start to inset these or pinch them down if we need to. So in our case, we'll go ahead and leave this inset set to 0. And we'll give this a length of maybe a little bit less than 1. Maybe something like 0.7. Looks like that should work just fine. Okay, and now once we're finished, we can go ahead and close out of that. So you can see this extrusion, again, just a very simple process. Now within Softimage, we could actually do an extrusion in a little bit simpler method if we don't necessarily want to use the extrusion command. What we could actually do is, with a set of polygons selected, we could press Ctrl D to duplicate these polygons, and it'll perform the exact same action. So Ctrl D to duplicate. Doesn't look like anything has happened, but watch what happens if I switch to my Translate tool. Press the V key on my keyboard. Now if I pull that out, you can see that an extrusion has actually happened. So this is really kind of the method I prefer to use in Softimage. I just find it a little bit easier than using the actual extrusion command. Okay, so looking through here, what I'd like to do is actually make a little bit of a lip that runs right across this end of the wing. So let's try to come in and select that. Again, I'm going to press the U key on my keyboard. Let's select one of these polygons, and now Alt middle click to grab that entire row. Now, once again, Control D to duplicate. And now let's try to scale these inward. Now in this case, you can start to see that when we start to scale and try to move things around, Softimage doesn't always do just a particularly great job of getting these to actually scale in along the proper direction, especially when we have a surface that's kind of odd shaped like this. So here's something that becomes really, really important. Let me just undo this to the point where I still have my extrusion, I just haven't moved anything yet. What I want to do is go into my transform options, and all the way down at the bottom, there's an option in here that allows us to transform components independently in local mode. Now, right now with this turned off, you can see if I were to grab all these polygons, it's really sort of moving them all together along sort of a unified axis when we're in this local mode. However, if I turn this option on to allow us to move them independently, you can see now it's going to move each one of these objects along its own y-axis, which is what we want. So now I can come in and start to pinch this down. Again, just making sure I am in a local mode. Now in this case, you can see that we get a little bit of interpenetration that's starting to happen, especially back here on the back side. So that's okay, we can come in and fix that. You can just press the I key on my keyboard to switch to my edge, or my raycast edge selection. Press the V key to switch back to my translate tool. And just start to pull that down. Okay, we'll swing right underneath here. And again, press the I key to try to grab that edge. Back to V. And pull that out. Again, just trying to sort of fix up some of that folding and interpenetration that we had back there. Okay, and now you can see we have performed our first extrusion. So sort of pulling that in and making a nice little lip there. Now another really, really important thing when it comes to working with polygons is the ability to actually smooth those. In Softimage, it's a very, very simple process. So with a polygon mesh selected, we just have to press the plus key on our keyboard. Now it's important to note that it's not just the plus key that is up above your top row of numbers. It actually has to be the plus key that's over on the number pad on your keyboard. So this might be a little bit easier to see if I were to actually pull up on my keyboard options here. So if I pulled up my keyboard mapping, again, the plus and minus keys that you want to use are these over here on the number pad. These plus and minus keys that we have up here do a completely separate thing. So to smooth your polygon, again, press the plus key. To unsmooth your polygons, start to use your minus key up here. So again, press the plus key to start to smooth. If I press it again, it smooths it out a little bit more. If I press it again, it smooths it out a little bit more. Okay, now looking at this, you can see that when we start to smooth this out, everything starts to become really sort of flat and very organic looking. And that's really just the nature of polygons. As you start to have these really, really large polygons, you start to get this more and more gradual smoothing. So if we wanted to come in here and start to add more of a sharp edge, the way that we do that is to add more polygons. We put those in closer proximity. That will start to force this to hold its shape a little bit better. So if I press the minus key on my keyboard to try to unsmooth this, this will make this a little bit easier to see. So I can go to Polymesh, and the tool that I like to use to go through this process is my Split Edge tool. So if I were to select maybe this row of edges right here, just middle click and try to add a row of edges that's right along that. Now with this tiny little row of polygons in here, if I were to press the plus key on my keyboard a couple of times, you can see where that really forces it to hold its shape much, much better. And likewise up here, if I were to again maybe just middle click to go back to my same tool, middle click to add another split right up here. And maybe while I'm at it, I'll just go ahead and middle click right up here to add maybe two edges. And now if I smooth that a couple of times, you can see how that really, really forces that to hold its shape. So I'm going to do the same over here. Again, just press the minus key, middle click to go to Polymesh, back to my Split Edge tool, middle click along here, middle click right along here, and maybe middle click right up here as well. Again, just to force it to hold its shape along each one of these edges. Now, once again, press the plus key on my keyboard a couple of times. And now you can see where it's, again, really force that to hold its shape much better and still retain those nice sharp edges. Now, this is sometimes not always a proper way to go, or sometimes it's not always an option. So for example, if I were to swing back around here to these wing flaps that we had made earlier, if I were to select these polygon objects, press the plus key on my keyboard a couple of times, you can see again where these really start to lose their shape and a lot of these hard edges. Now, because of the actual shape of this geometry, it's going to become very difficult to be able to come in here and start to add splits without just completely ruining the shape of this wing. So sometimes we can use another approach, which is the actual edge weighting feature. So to illustrate this, if I were to come into my edge selection, just press the I key on my keyboard to go to my raycast edge selection. And let me come in here, press and hold the shift key on my keyboard. Essentially, I'll grab all of these border edges that run right along here. This might be a little bit easier to see if I press the minus key on my keyboard. So grab those edges right in there. Here we are, come down here along the bottom. Essentially just grabbing all of these edges around this little opening here. So again, making sure I get all the way around. Sometimes this gets a little bit tricky to grab or to navigate to. Oops, come in here, make sure I deselect anything that I don't need. So essentially I have this entire outer border selected, as well as these corner pieces, because these corner pieces, again, I want to make sure that they hold their shape very well. So now with these selected, this will be a little bit easier to demonstrate if I now smooth these a couple of times. So press the plus key on my keyboard. And now with these selected, what we can do is adjust the edge weight of these particular edges. So with these selected, a quick way to get to this is just to right click, and all the way down toward the bottom, we have our set crease value. So if we click on this, what we can now do is start to dial up that crease value. Now if we start to dial it up too high, you can see that we get a perfectly sharp edge. We may not necessarily want that. So what I like to try to do is dial this down just to where we have a little bit more of a beveled appearance right in there. Now you can see if I deselect, that even though we're still using our smoothing, that it really just forces these edges to hold their shape much better. And we can really do that for any of our edges here, or any of our polygon surfaces. So again, if I were to select these edges, if we need to, we could just select this surface, either pull it back, or we could just isolate it by just clicking on our camera icon and go to Isolate Selection. Now we can get in here a little bit easier, start to work. Softimage has already remembered that I previously had these outer edges selected, so I can just come in and shift select these two corners. There we are. And just go ahead and close that out to unisolate this. Again, if I press the plus key on my keyboard a couple of times, and with these edges selected, right click, and go to the crease value. Now I can start to dial that up until I found a value that is going to be right for me. In my case, it looks like it's a little bit higher than 2. And there we go. So now we have this little bit of a crease in here that's really just forcing this to hold its shape, but still allow it to be smoothed. So really, your polygon edge weight is something that you'll find very useful, especially when it comes to this type of hard surface modeling, where we can start to combine the effects of a smoothed polygon mesh with the nice, sharp, hard edges that we would probably want with some kind of a manufactured wing. So whenever we pick up in our next lesson, I'll go ahead and have the edge crease value applied to this other piece of the wing, as well as this other flap, and then we'll start to look at some additional sections of this aircraft.